A lot of people are thinking a lot of people are thinking of the transition, the green transition is another variety of fish tank world. So I hope we can get away from the fish tank world and get into the world of rivers and oceans and the way the indigenous people saw the world. With that, I would like to turn it over to John Mark, who was like the 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 prime mover behind the Met action and the designer and one of the important implementers of that action. So he can tell you all about it, why he did it, and how he did it. John Mark, up to you. Over to you.
Thank you, Shayok. Um, yes, I was there, and I did it along with my friends, and I helped prepare it. So Shayok asked me to speak personally about how this came to happen and what we're thinking about it. So speaking personally, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am uh, in order to understand how I came to this. So, first off, I am what they call a PK. I'm what's called a preacher's kid. My father was a preacher. All of the men in my father's family were preachers and are preachers. And but my father was he was a liberation theology kind of a preacher. He he grew up and he worked in very small towns in the Midwest, very conservative places. But as a young man, my father was very moved by the civil rights movement. And he was especially distressed when he saw the escalation of the war in Vietnam. And at that point, he became a war tax resistor. Both of my parents stopped paying their income taxes as a protest against the war. And this was their act of civil disobedience. This was their refusal to be complicit, their refusal to participate in what they saw as intolerable sin. They never thought about the consequences to themselves when they made this choice. So my dad lost his job. The IRS took their money out of the bank account, seized their car, um, and they never regretted uh, what they did. Um, they were people who acted on principle and were proud to do that without consideration for themselves. So I've carried that in my heart all my life as a model for right behavior. The other thing I'll tell you about me is that I'm a musician. I've had my career as a classical musician. I play the cello. I also play the viola da gamba, which is a very specialist instrument for playing Renaissance and Baroque music. And I love this. I love music. I love playing my instruments. I've had a professional career performing. I've done a lot of opera. I've sat in the pit in operas and ballets and played those pieces, so I know what it's like to be there. So I know a little bit about the business that we were disrupting on Thursday night. My father, his favorite hymn was uh, "Once to every man and nation comes, once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood for the good or evil side." So 18 months ago, when the war in Ukraine escalated, I felt like that was my moment to decide. And I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. And I needed to become an activist at that point. So I started looking for places where I could do that, where I could take action against the kind of injustice that I saw in the world. And I ended up with Extinction Rebellion. So fast forward to this summer. Uh, this summer, Extinction Rebellion has been, and through this year, has been working with two different themes. Uh, One is the small numbers, big impact idea. We've all been really, really inspired by what Shyok did at the U.S. Open tennis tournament. That action took only a few people, fewer than 10 people, to set it up and make it happen, and it had an enormous impact. It got more press than many actions that take many, many, many people and months of planning to do. So small numbers, big impact. The other theme that we've been working with this year is the theme that we disrupt what we love, and we do this for more than one reason. Um, we do these disruptions uh, as a message. We disrupt what we love gently, carefully, non-violently, with love, because all of these things that we love will be lost and will be disrupted violently in climate crisis if we do not act to mitigate. We do these actions because the, these things that we love, they we find them in the communities that we love. So when we disrupt what we love, we are acting inside the communities where we have stakes and where we have relationships. We act where we love because some of these actions get a lot of publicity. So we disrupt what we love. So with these things in mind, disrupting what we love, small numbers, big impact, acting inside our own communities. I've been inspired by seeing Tim Martin and Joanna Smith making disruption in an art museum, Shyok making disruption in a tennis tournament, Mark Kelly bringing the action to the LGBTQ community center, a place where she has, for many, many years, had real stakes. So with all of this in mind, when Linda Solomon said to me, well, what about the Metropolitan Opera? Having done what I've done, said what I've said, and lived what I've lived, I couldn't say anything other than, well, let's do that. I was immediately horrified and terrified, because the Metropolitan Opera is it's one of the most prestigious musical institutions in the world. And I knew that there was a possibility of that disrupting this would bring all kinds of disapproval down upon us. But nonetheless, it seemed like the right thing to do. So we started planning. We looked at the Metropolitan Opera calendar and to decide on which performance to disrupt. We decided against disrupting the autobiography of Malcolm X. That was a controversial decision, but some of us felt very, very strongly that that would be marketed to a demographic that didn't come to the Metropolitan Opera often. Likewise, Florencias en el Amazonas is an opera in Spanish, the first opera in Spanish. And that would also be bringing a special audience to the Met. It would be bringing Latino people in numbers to the Met. And as a pale person, I wasn't willing to bring the disruption to those audiences. That's not my community. I don't feel like I have standing to disrupt that. So what we did see on the calendar was a performance of Tannhäuser, so North German romantic thing. Those are my people. I can speak to those people. So we decided to disrupt the opening night of the revival of Wagner's Tannhäuser. when thinking about this opera, I remembered having actually seen a broadcast of this opera, and there's a striking scene, a really, really dramatic scene, right in the middle of the thing, where uh, there's a singing contest between the knights, and the knight who sings the best song about love will get to marry the princess. So what happens is Wolfram sings a song of courtly love, in which he sings that love is a pure fountain, and he would never sully this fountain by putting his lips to it. Tannhäuser, the other knight, stands up to contradict him, to say, no, 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 you're wrong, Wolfram. Love is an ever replenishing spring, and it's made to be enjoyed, and I will definitely drink from that spring. One thing that I noticed when I heard this opera as a kid was that the music about the pure spring was actually kind of insipid, and the music of Tannhäuser, when he sings "Yes, I'll drink from that spring," is so exciting. It's so thrilling. The next thing that happens in the opera is that the whole court is horrified by what Tannhäuser has said. So that all of the men draw their swords and prepare to kill Tannhäuser for this heresy. The princess intervenes and protects Tannhäuser and says, "No, if you kill him now, you'll be stealing his chance for redemption." So instead of killing him, they ostracize him. They make him go on a pilgrimage to Rome to ask the Pope for redemption. So that stupid seemed eminently worth disrupting, and you know, speaking of disruption, the exact kind of disruption that we're doing, as climate rebels, we understand that the leaders of this world have conditioned us and prepared us and rehearsed us to play out a story that ends with extinction. And our whole plan is to change the script and not play the roles that our leaders have given us in this play that ends in extinction. So last Thursday night, at the performance of Tannhäuser, we changed the script. After Wolfram sang his song about the pure spring, before Tannhäuser had a chance to interrupt him, I interrupted the proceedings by saying, "Wolfram, wake up! That spring is polluted. We're in a climate crisis." And I dropped the banner, and I just kept shouting and shouting and shouting and shouting. I was in the highest balcony, and I thought that I had been thinking all week, security would be on top of me in 20 seconds and drag me out. But I also knew it beforehand that whatever I thought was going to happen wouldn't happen. And that's the thing that didn't happen. They didn't get on top of me in 20 seconds. I had to stand up there shouting for at least 5 minutes. I was shouting and shouting. The audience was screaming back at me, "You're crazy, take that man away." I kept on shouting, "End fossil fuels." And I was completely astonished after I'd been shouting for 5 minutes. Finally, security was coming for me, and just as security was coming for me, I saw the golden curtain go down. So they were really, really interrupting the performance. The curtain went down. I couldn't believe I was seeing it happen. And at that point, I realized we're winning. So when security said, "Let's go," I walked out with them. And when I got to the lobby, I heard ushers saying, "There's another one." So at that point, Dancing Leaf had dropped her banner on the other side and was continuing the protest. They pulled Dancing Leaf and Jim Gordon out of there pretty promptly and took us downstairs to the main floor lobby. And I asked the guy, "Are we under arrest?" And he said, "You will be." He was wrong. After we'd been detained downstairs for a few minutes, we saw Linda Solomon escorted out of the theater. Linda had made the third disruption of the performance from the main floor. So we learned afterwards that the entire disruption of the thing lasted for 22 minutes. Um, and and the next day, or within hours, there was news all over the world, and two enormous pieces in the New York Times. So this action uh, uh, made by a small numbers of people did have a big impact in the press. Now, um, the press has been asking, and people who comment on this thing have been asking, like, who is your audience for this? What do you expect to come out of this? Who were you speaking to in this protest? Lots of people question whether the Metropolitan Opera is the right place to be addressing the people who need to be addressed about climate crisis. So our answer to that is, first of all, that the first audience is everyone. The climate crisis affects everyone. So we need to be taking the message about the urgency of the climate crisis everywhere, to every sector of society, including schools and commerce and government and the arts. Everyone has a stake in this. We do this for publicity. We are addressing, of course, not only the people who were in the room at the Metropolitan Opera, but everybody who's seeing the press. All of the people who are reading the papers and seeing the announcements on social media. Among all those people who can see what we've done, we know that there's a spectrum of responses, that there are people who have already joined us and are taking action with us. There are people who are just about ready to take action, people who understand the urgency of the climate crisis and they don't know what to do. And we're hoping that some of them will see that we're taking action and that they will join us. There are people who are who understand a little bit about the climate crisis and hadn't thought about taking action, but we're hoping that they'll see the urgency and take action now. There are people at the other end of the spectrum uh, who will never be persuaded by us, and that includes the bad guys, the people who are most responsible for this crisis. And we know we won't change them, but we still want to address them because it's not okay for those people to believe that they can do what they're doing and get away with it and nobody will ever care. So um, uh, the one last thing I'll say, personally about this thing is that this was my community. Among the people addressed were my people. My brother is a pianist on the staff at the Seattle Opera, and I personally know opera conductors, so I'm 1 or 2 degrees of separation removed from the fancy people in the uh, highly networked world of opera, and so I'm privy to what they're saying about it. My friends are instrumental musicians who work in the pits in opera companies, and I have to say I've been astonished by the level of support for this action in those communities. I have famous one very famous violinist who's strongly in support of this. One conductor who's a person who's conducted at the New York City Opera, he's in support of this. So really thoughtful and important people are backing this action. So actually, my terrible fears that I would be that I would be ostracized from my profession after committing this horror were not realized at all. Um, there's a world of people who are with us, who understand the urgency of the climate crisis, and are supporting disruptive actions as a last chance to make a difference in this climate crisis. That's what I have to say.